Hello and welcome. Can you see me? I don't know if I'm live. So if I see a yes in the next 30 seconds, then I'm going to keep talking. And then if not, I don't know. I don't know. I only had start streaming. Okay, so you can see me. I really don't know. Okay, thank you. Oh, this is a Wednesday. Hello and welcome to the Savage Stream. Thank you so much for those of you who are still watching after that incredible hook. And thank you to those who are watching on the replay. My name is Charisse, the Sci-Fi Savage, and today we are going to be reviewing episode 3, season 1, episode 3 of Star Trek Starfleet Academy. Now, last week I talked about episode 1 because episodes 1 and 2 dropped 2 weeks ago at the time of this recording. And I only talked about episode 1 because I had not yet seen episode 2. And today I'm mostly going to talk about episode 3 as well. But I'm also going to give a little recap of episode 2, you know, for like closure. So if you're watching on the replay, there will be timestamps below eventually. So you'll be able to skip ahead at any point. Now, episode 1 was so good. Like it really blew my expectations. So definitely go and watch that video if you want to see me just geek out about that. Episode 2, however, was not that. It was not episode 1. It did not blow my mind and totally supersede my expectations. Instead, it met my expectations head on, which makes sense, right? Because if you watch the trailer for Academy, basically everything we got in episode 2 was the trailer, right? It was lots of teen angst and romance and I don't know, like just kind of slice of life stuff. And that's very much what episode 2 was. It was fine. Like it wasn't bad. It wasn't, you know, it was fine. It was exactly what I was expecting, which was also fine. But episode 1 really just blew my mind because that's not what I saw coming. Now, a couple things I want to say about episode 2 before we jump into episode 3. I really like the idea of Beta Z coming back into the fold. I like how they're doubling down on life after the burn. I think that's so interesting how they're like, okay, you know, we've had this big burn back in Discovery time and these children all went through it and it was so terrible. And, you know, we're kind of trying to piece ourselves together now. We know, I don't know if they know the source of the burn, like that was figured out in Discovery, but I don't know if they kept that Kelpian a secret. When Grace, I saw you in the chat. You probably know the answer to this question. I don't know if they kept if they kept it a secret, like the source of the burn, if they told the rest of the galaxy or they told the rest of the Federation, or if they just were kind of like, pinky promise it won't happen again. I don't know. But at this point, they're recovering. They're assuming a burn won't happen again. They're trying to rebuild. And many of the planets that used to be a part of the Federation have all gone their own way because in the burn, if you have not watched Discovery, I forget which season this is that happens. I want to say 3. What happens is like there's a huge intergalactic crisis and a bunch of ships explode and like there's no more fuel and basically it's like every man for himself. So all the planets who are in this alliance of a federation of planets all kind of break apart. They do their own thing. They're just trying to protect themselves, protect their ship, protect their resources, and it becomes like Mad Max in space. So it's this whole apocalyptic situation. And the Discovery comes in, they're rebuilding the Federation, et cetera, et cetera. Now, here we are with Academy. They're at the point where they're like, okay, we need to start training new cadets. We need to rebuild. But now they have to go around and try to like recollect all the planets that left and try to win them back over as allies and also find new planets and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, the ratings, it depends because I've heard good things. I've heard bad things. I really think it's a personal taste thing. As far as how good the show is, I really think it's a personal taste thing because like Discovery or even going back to like older Trek, TNG, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and Enterprise all had very different flavors, like very different tones, very different speeds. Voyager was very action packed. TNG was a lot more mellow and more like kind of, ambassadorial. I don't know, the way that Picard was more like, let's talk it out. And so there was a lot of like ethical issues that were resolved in that way versus Voyager was very action-packed, lots of explosions and space battles. Deep Space Nine also had a fair amount of explosions and space battles, but that was like really intense. Definitely more war, like that. It was kind of all about that and how to survive in a war. And Enterprise was like the beginning of the Federation and everything is new. So everything has a different flavor. And I would say that that particular style has continued on with all of New Trek. The flavor of Picard is totally different from the flavor of Discovery and the flavor of Strange New Worlds and the flavor of Prodigy or Lower Decks and the flavor of Star Trek Starfleet Academy. So while some people are just like, oh, it's all bad, I would say it's all very different. So it's like, if you're not really into comedy, like one of my friends who is the biggest Trekkie I know does not like sci-fi and comedy. She just does not think they should mix. She doesn't like it. She doesn't want it. She's not here for it. So she cannot stand Lower Decks. She's probably seen like 2 minutes of one episode and she hates that show and she will never watch that show. I love Lower Decks. I think it's amazing. I think it's a love letter to fans. So if you listen to her ratings, she would say, yeah, Lower Decks is trash, right? Because she doesn't like sci-fi and comedy. That's not her thing. But for me, who I love all kinds of things, you know, including sci-fi and comedy, I think it's great. So I would definitely go on your own opinion. Like someday I know you're going to watch this show, PS2 Chipper. I definitely go on your own opinion versus like ratings because it's really a taste thing. Anywho, before I jump into any more, spoiler alerts. I don't have the beautiful banner this time, but spoilers. Spoilers. If you have not yet seen these episodes, I will be spoiling the heck out of them. So this is your time to, fair warning, to leave now while you still can. Okay, so going back to episode 2, we're trying to fold back in Beta Z, and they apparently have put up some kind of psionic wall to block off their area of space to protect themselves. And now the Federation is reaching out, and they're like, hey, let's come back together again, be a part of the Federation. And so the president of Beta Z is like, no, you don't care about us, it's all about you, blah, blah, blah. There's a whole debate thing going on. And he has 2 kids who are the same age as all the Academy students, of course. And then shenanigans ensue. One of the things I really loved about that episode was the president's daughter, Tarima. She has this like jewel on her tooth. And Caleb, who was the main guy in episode 1, was just like, oh, you've got this jewel in your tooth. And she's just like, oh, that's because I'm the sacred holder of whatever. She has this long, ridiculously long title that was so Lwaxana Troi. It just made my heart smile because Lwaxana's title is pretty good, but her title was like, I don't know, it was like 5. It was like 5 of the Lwaxana's titles. So it was amazing. Also, another thing that one of my friends brought up, the host of the Trek, Marry, Kill podcast, he was like, am I losing my mind, or are they showing Betazoids as empaths only? And I was like, oh my gosh, you're right. It is showing them as empaths only. Now, Betazoids famously are telepathic. The reason why Deanna Troi was empathic, and this is like super geeky, so, you know, use timestamps when they're available. But the reason why Deanna Troi was an empath and not just a pure telepath is because she was half human. So the way that it was actually written in the TNG Bible that Gene Roddenberry wrote for the directors. Okay, so he wrote like what all the characters' relationships should be like, a little bit of their backstory and stuff like that. And for Deanna, he did not want her to be a pure telepath because he was like, that's too easy. She can just read people's minds and just know exactly what they're thinking. So instead he said, okay, she'll be half human. So she's not telepathic. She's only empathic, and she can feel and sense what people are feeling, but she can't straight up read their minds. Now, she can have telepathic communications with other telepaths. So like her mother, they can telepathically speak to each other. And then also randomly, she can telepathically speak with Riker because reasons, right? They're like, oh, it's because that's her Imzadi and because they're in love and something. Okay, fine, whatever. But you don't really see her using that ability ever, like at any point. However, in both Academy and in Lower Decks, because Brian went back and checked, they talk about Betazoids as being empathic. And as if that is their secret sauce, but really it was their telepathy. So I think that's really interesting. And I wonder if, because the president's daughter is all about like, I feel things stronger than other people. And it's like, but you shouldn't. Really, you should be able to read people's minds better than anybody else. So I wonder if they're going to bring back the telepathy ability to the Betazoids, or if they're just going to like sweep that under the rug and pretend like that's not a thing. So that's just something that I'll be interested to see. I'm feeling like they're going to sweep that under the rug because they haven't mentioned it, and they just keep mentioning Tarima being able to sense things, and Occam, her brother, like, as far as we know, can't sense anything. He cannot read a room to save his life. So, oh, that'll be interesting. So does he, like, not have the abilities? I don't know. We also don't know anything about the president's wife at this point because she was not in the episode. So maybe she's human, and maybe they're half human, and maybe that's why she's empathic, just like Deanna. Who knows? They don't really need to answer that question for me, but I just thought it was interesting when he brought it up. I was like, oh, my gosh, yeah, like, Betazoids are telepaths. Okay, moving on. Going into episode 3, I was not sure what to expect because I had some people who were like, and no spoilers because I did not want spoilers, but some people were like, oh my gosh, it's really good. I really liked it. And some people were like, oh my gosh, it's really bad. I really hated it. So I was like, oh, interesting. Let's see what this episode holds in store. So I'm going to check the chat really quick, and then I'm going to give you my thoughts on episode 3. And I'm just going to kind of go through some of the big points. So again, major spoiler alert. And as I'm going through the major points, I'll just tell you my thoughts as I was watching it. Okay, PS2 Chipper says there's some rumors behind the scene with Paramount that they are restructuring contracts. Okay, that makes sense. That's a thing companies do, so I believe you. Karen says, I loved the sign language representation. I did also, and I'm guessing, because I don't know sign language, I'm guessing it was probably American Sign Language, but something that's interesting is that every people group that has sign language has their own version of sign language. So not only is there American Sign Language and British Sign Language, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, but there's also dialects of sign language. There's different ways to speak the same word depending on where you're from. So I wonder, since I don't know sign language, I don't know what the president of Beta Z was doing exactly, but I wonder, was it American Sign Language? Was it what was the dialect? This is just me being geeky, being like, what kind of sign language was that exactly? But I thought that was really cool too. And then he had this thing that he put on his neck so that his voice could be heard, which was also a nice kind of technological adaptation. If you have not seen, I don't even know if it's still available. It's called Echo on Disney, and it's part of the Marvel multiverse. But it's a superhero. She's a superhero who signs because she's deaf. And they have this technology between her and the main bad guy, whose name I don't know, but he's played by Vincent D'Onofrio. And there's some kind of what is it? Some kind of device where when he speaks, sign language shows up as a holographic hands in front of him, signing around his body and stuff. And so that way the woman playing Echo can understand what he's saying. And I thought that was really, really cool. But I also like the thing that goes on his neck and then everybody can hear him. Either way, it's pretty neat. But I kind of would have liked something like they did on Echo, where it was some visual representation of signing so that he wasn't reading people's lips, because he did say that. He was like, I'm reading your lips and I'm understanding XYZ. And when I was learning sign language, they said there was some stat people who can read lips can only understand 10%. Kingpin. Thank you. Kingpin. Such an easy name. I totally forgot it. There was some stat that people who understand lip reading can only comprehend about 10% of what someone's saying by looking at the movements of their lips. So it's not the best way to understand what someone's saying, to have to try to read their lips and try to understand the sounds they're making. So I kind of would have liked to see that technology in this episode, of some kind of holographic projected hands that are signing every time someone else speaks, so that the president could hear what they were saying. But whatever, I love that we had representation. I agree with you, Karen. I thought that was pretty cool. Good. I'm glad you're back. Okay, I read that the reason the president was using sign language was that the actor is hearing impaired. Oh, interesting. PS2 Chipper says American Sign Language and British Sign Language are not mutually understandable. Yeah, just because they're different languages. Very true. Wilson Fisk. Okay, yeah, I would have never remembered Wilson Fisk ever, but Kingpin would have come to me at some point. Okay, spoiler alert, we're now moving into episode 3. So if you have not yet seen it and don't want to hear my thoughts, maybe skip this video and come back later. Okay, so in the beginning, Act 1, the rivalry begins. So the opening scene, this was a Darum-centered episode. And Darum is the jock that the main guy from episode 1, Caleb, has issues with, that they are now roommates, which is hilarious. So this is kind of a Darum-centered-ish episode. This show is very much more ensemble than it is like TNG, which was mainly about Picard. And then they would kind of have these episodes where it's a Data episode, a Geordi episode, a Beverly episode, Picard. And then every once in a while you'd have an ensemble. This show seems to lean more towards ensemble as we're moving away from Caleb's main story, which works for me because I would love to hear more about these other characters. So this one was more of a Darum leaning episode. It starts with him. He's working out super hard, crack of dawn, while Caleb and Occam, who's the Beta Z son, the president's son, is also their roommate. So they're both sleeping, and Darum's making this log to his parents, and he's like, "Dear Mom and Dad, I continue to be the best student in the world. I work out so hard. I wake up early. I go to sleep late. I'm just the best," or whatever. and he's talking all this trash about, not talking trash, but he's just like hyping himself up about all the hard work he's putting in. And he's like, time to hit the gym after working out in the room. And he opens the door and he runs into Genesis, which was the sassy, snarky character from episode 1. And she's been up for hours working out. And he's just like, what the heck? So this is where like his rivalry begins with Genesis. Who's the more committed person? Now here's my thing. 2 things. So first, last week, Chaotic Truth, who is, I don't see him in the chat today, but Chaotic Truth mentioned that he felt like the technology in this show was not as advanced as it should be based on the era it's supposed to be taking place, which is like 1,000 years from now, right? And he was like, this technology just doesn't seem futuristic enough. And my response was, how would we know? To what are we comparing it to? You know, what would 1,000 years from now technology actually look like? And I feel like the technology from Discovery looks futuristic to me, and this is around the same era. So I'm like, it's fine. But in this episode, in the beginning, when Darren wakes up, he makes himself a protein shake, and he literally has like a tumbler just like this, and he's like dumping in the protein powder with a scoop. Like he's scooping in the powder and he's like shaking it up, and I was like, okay, yeah, that does actually seem like pretty outdated tech. Because I'm like, that's what we do now. If this is 1,000 years from now, I better not still be seeing people shaking their drink. Like, surely there is some kind of replicator situation that could just give you the protein shake pre-shaken. I don't know. What do you guys think about that? It's a dumb point, but I was like, you know what? Touche, Chaotic Truth. Touche. This technology is not super advanced if he's literally like scooping powder into a cup and shaking it really hard. Like no blender, nothing. Anyways, that was a small part. So that's where the rivalry begins between Genesis and Darum. Then we go to their first class of the day, which happens to be gym. So why were Genesis and Darum working out anyways? Their first class is gym. I don't know. I don't know. But we go to gym, and then the gym is split in half. And like the left side is the War College, and the right side is Academy, because they're sharing this space because the Academy has just been reopened, but I guess what has been open ever since the burn was the War College. So this is me piecing it together. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what happened is that when all hell broke loose and the Federation just went to war, you know, and every man for themselves, every planet for themselves, and they were trying to protect their resources, they converted the Academy into a War College. And so then they were just training cadets to fight wars. The wars are now done-ish, and they're trying to get to a state of peace where they're at peace with most people. So now they're reopening the Academy to try to teach cadets about ending wars and bringing peace. So they're taking the same campus that used to be the Academy and then became the War College, and now they're just splitting it in half and making it half War College, half Academy. Because we still need the War College because wars still happen, but we want to bring back this like era of peace. So they're in the gym. The gym is split halfway between, like down the line, and then they start beefing with each other. Just because they're like, what are you doing, Academy? What are you doing, War College? So this whole thing I found to be really infantile. I didn't really care about their little petty conflicts, because the only reason they had a conflict because it was like us versus them. It's just like, because you're wearing a different color uniform, we hate you guys. I don't know. It's just really stupid. However, though I thought it was stupid, I also felt like it was relevant in this context. Okay, this is a show about young adults. But this is like young adults, they're supposed to be college age. I feel like this behavior is more high school than college, but what have you. That's neither here nor there. While I thought that this animosity between them was dumb and pointless, I also felt like it makes sense in this context. This is kind of the only place where you could put something like this, a rivalry just because we wear different color shirts, that would make sense in the Star Trek universe, outside of like, we hate Klingons because they're Klingon. We hate that, you know, other than just like these big broad strokes against whole entire species. This makes sense where it's a more like a more microcosm, a small world. They have a bunch of beef, and then Lieutenant Thok is like, get in line and, you know, get back to your classes or whatever. She tries to break it up. So then a few minutes later, they are the cadets from the Academy are all in the locker rooms, and they're like between showering and stuff, and they're just like all talking to each other about whatever. And then suddenly they all start getting beamed away. And they end up all over the Academy. Like Caleb shows up in a classroom but naked. Sam and Genesis are beamed into like the fountain. So they're like, you know, suddenly they're covered in water. And they're all like either half naked or completely naked, popping up all over the campus. And they are so humiliated and so embarrassed. And the War College is like, that's what you get. And we're going to keep doing it to show you that we're boss. again, pretty infantile, but this is like where the prank wars start. So Lieutenant Thok goes to Chancellor Ake and is just like, we need to, exactly, prank war. I love that you put an exclamation point, prank war. So Lieutenant Thok goes to Chancellor Ake and she's like, look, a prank war is about to start. Our cadets are not having it. The War College started it, but you need to stop it before it gets totally out of hand. And I just love Chancellor Ake. She's like, it's fine. And Thok is like, it's not fine. Like, this is going to end in bloodshed, which is kind of funny because you think she would be the first one to be like, yes, bloodshed. But Ake is the one who's just like, they're just kids. They're just kids doing kid stuff. Don't worry about it. So Thok tries and tries and tries, and Ake is just not hearing it. So she's like, all right, fine. Meanwhile, they're trying to start up some sports teams. This sport is called Calico, unless I heard that wrong. Okay, PS2 Chipper says, I felt like the technology wasn't an evolution of technology that was established in previous Star Trek lore. But how would you, compared to what though, PS2 Chipper? Compared to what? Like, what would so here's my question about the technology. What should the technology be? Because that I don't know. If people are saying this technology is not as advanced as it should be, what should it be? Like, what is it? What exactly should the technology look like? Like, because I have no frame of reference for 1,000 years from now. I mean, we didn't have electric cars just like a few decades ago, let alone 1,000 years ago. 1,000 years ago, people were churning butter. You know what I mean? Like, or were they churning butter? I don't even know. I don't even know what kind of technology we had 1,000 years ago. So it's just how, and I also think of stuff like Chat GPT or touchscreens and stuff like that. That is something that would not be a natural evolution of horse and buggies, because technology doesn't go like that. It doesn't like naturally from one thing to the next always. It's not always linear. Sometimes it's exponential. Sometimes it just jumps from thing to thing. Sometimes you go from horse and buggy to gas car to electric car, and it is linear. But sometimes we just go to drones. You know, we go to horse and buggy to drones, and that's like not even connected. So yeah, what do you think it should be? Okay. I didn't say it wasn't as advanced. I just said it didn't feel right. Okay. I'll take that. Calica like Galactica. Okay. Yes, Karen. Thok did say if they shenaned once, they'll shenan again, which is funny because that's like a phrase I've heard so much on TikTok, and I kind of love that they took a TikTok phrase and put it in Star Trek. I don't know. I mean, it does date the show because like I don't know if that will be funny in the future, but it made me chuckle. So anyways, Ake's like, it's fine. I'm cool with that. And then in Act 2, they're learning to play Calico. Calica. Oh, Calica. I see what you're saying. Okay. Thank you for that. Fixed in my notes. They're learning to play Calica. And this whole scene is just so silly. Like, it's so funny. It's so awesome. I'm here for it. This game is basically like there are two mascots. It's kind of like Capture the Flag. There's two mascots on opposite sides of the terrain, and the teams have to shoot a target over the head of the other opponent's mascot. But the terrain is like rocks and mountains and fire and explosions, and there's drones in the air shooting at them and stuff like that. And so it's just like the most intense game ever. And it was just really fun to watch because as they're going in, Genesis and Darum, who are, you know, the rivals in this episode, they're both like, yeah, I was the captain of my Calica team back at home, and like, I got this. And so they're super, you know, they come in like FBI agents or something. They've got everything nailed. And then we see Sam, who is a photonic, and she's just like, what's going on? You know, she's holding onto rocks, screaming for her life. And then we see Occam, who is the Betazoid the president's son, who, like, you gotta imagine has probably lived a pretty sheltered life. And he's also like holding on to rocks, screaming. So him and Sam are just like, ah. And it's so funny. It's so much fun to watch. This was a really silly scene. I don't think it was good enough to, like, at this point, I wasn't like, oh, this episode's awesome. I was still pretty like, it's fine, it's whatever. However, the set was gorgeous. And I do wonder, and I don't know if anybody knows this, but I wonder how much of this set was built and was using practical effects and how much of it was CGI. So I know, like, obviously the drones were CGI'd, and then the laser beams that they were shooting down, like all the phaser fire was CGI'd. But I wonder how much of the set they actually built, because they obviously Sam had to hold on to rocks and stuff like that. And I wonder if like the terrain was really as sandy. It looked really, really good. Like, I was here for it. That scene was just gorgeous. Overall though, I thought that the rivalry between Genesis and Darum was pretty pointless. I thought it was just as pointless as the rivalry between Darum and Caleb, but once again, reasonable in this context. You know, like, they're young adults who get upset about stuff. Okay. All right, Act 3. War College versus Academy. So in Act 3, the whose idea was this? Oh, it was Darum. So Darum ends up becoming the captain of their Calica team. And so he's like, we got to teach those War College people a lesson, because they embarrassed him again later. So they were like, we have to teach them a lesson. And Genesis is like, is this about you or is this about us? And Darum's like, it's all the same thing, but really it's about Darum. And so he's like, I challenged them to a Calica battle in the, I don't know, I want to call it the atrium, but whatever their like whatever their little main area is, that's where they're going to have this battle, like in the middle of the night after all the teachers are asleep or something like that. So they have this battle, and it's, again, pretty fun to watch. Occam, because he was so bad, ended up becoming the mascot. So all he had to do was just like stand on a spot with the little target over his head and just try not to get shot or whatever. And that was, I don't know why, but that was just really, really funny to just see him standing there, and he's talking trash, and the other mascot's talking trash, and they're both just standing still, and they're talking trash at each other. I thought that was really funny. Mugato. Wait. Is that from... Wait. Oh my gosh. Is that the little creature inside the chest of, from, oh man, I'm blanking on the name of this movie. We'll come back to it. Okay, so... they're having this battle, and they're shooting each other, and every time they get shot, they go to the out of bounds zone. They get beamed automatically, like, off of the floor, and then whoever gets the other target first wins. And so Darum is leading, and they lose 2 out of 3 of the games, or maybe 2 out of 3 of the games, and then Genesis is left, and she's like, man, I have actual strategy. So she comes up with a strategy. It's a genius strategy. They get a point, and they're like celebrating, and everyone's all happy. And Genesis is like, well, we didn't win, but at least it wasn't a total shutout. At least we got 1 point. And the Vulcan player in the War College team looks over at Darum and is like, they finally found a good strategy, getting rid of you. And you just see Darum just like totally deflate, like, I'm the worst captain in the world. And so he quits. Like, he quits on the spot. He's just like, you should be the leader, not me, Genesis. And he walks away, and you're like, wow, where's the resilience, dude? Like, if you're such a tough guy, you can't handle that? Apparently not. At the same time that we're having this rivalry between the kids, and of course they get caught and by Reno and Thok, and they get in trouble. But at the same time, we have this other like behind the scenes rivalry happening between Chancellor Ake and Chancellor Kelrick, I think is his name, of the War College. And Chancellor Kelrick is very like buttoned up and very like proper with everything. And of course, Ake walks around with no shoes on her feet, and she's like very much a hippie, right? She's very much go with the flow. So these two are a very nice contrast, and they end up just having tea together where they can talk over their differences. This is Ake's hope. And so she's like, look, I looked into it. The way your cadets were able to beam my cadets all over the place and embarrass them and humiliate them, the only way they were able to do that is if they had command codes. So you had to give them the codes in order to do that. Like, why are you getting into this beef between the kids, basically? And Kelrick is like, look, we're better than you in every way. You're an embarrassment. And, like, if you can't take it, get out of here. Kawato, what are we talking about? Oh, that is the War College mascot. It's a Kawato? You know what? Yes, from Total Recall. How ironic is it that I couldn't remember Total Recall? That's the perfect irony right there. Kawato. What was the name of the... Oh, shoot. Hey, Trek Reviewer. I think you said something earlier. I might have missed it. Let me see. Hold on. Yes, I totally did. I am willing to bet if someone asked Mr. T what he thought about people amending Star Trek Academy, he would say, I pity the fools. Maybe. He pitied every fool, though, so that's not saying much. Maybe they should have a love triangle between Caleb, Genesis, and the Klingon cadet. Then they can have a scene where the Klingon grabs Caleb and says, give me Genesis. Give me Genesis. Maybe they will. Who knows? We're only in season 1. Yes, Quaid. Thank you. Anyways, we have this lovely tete-a-tete between Kelrick and Ake, where Ake is just like, look, you gave them the codes. Why are you getting in between this beef between the kids? And he's just like, because I can and because that's what you deserve. And so Ake's like, all right, you know this means war, right? Like if you want to fight, we're gonna fight. And Kelwick's like, please, like, I'm not threatened in the least. So Ake leaves with this really weird threat of just like, yeah, well, your 12 to 6 is my 6 to 12, so you remember that, because he was telling her the proper, perfect way to stir a tea has to be right to left and side to side. Like, he has this whole thing, even with the tea, and if you don't do it exactly right, then it doesn't come out perfect. And Ake is just like, stir, sip, done. She's like, nope, none of that. And at one point, he's like, I would call you naive, but I know you're like, you have 300 years on me or something like that. And she's like, 302 or something like that. She's just like, yeah, like, she's been around long enough to make full circle from, I'm sure at some point she was super buttoned up, but now at this point, there's just no need for it. But I really like that scene because I feel like I was getting this Columbo energy from Ake, you know, where you kind of want other people to underestimate you just so you can get them in the end. So I kind of like that. Sela says, remember that time when Wesley got the antimatter regulator to spray chili sauce on his rival at the academy? Now I want some chili sauce. So I actually liked that conversation between them, and I liked the contrast that they play up. And I like that Ake just seems so unbothered by like everything in life. So, they get caught, right? The kids get caught for this illicit Calica fight. And so Ake's yelling at them, and she's trying to give them hints about what to do in order to get ultimate revenge. But she doesn't want to come out and say it. So she's just like giving them all these weird hints in the middle of all of her yelling at them. So they leave, and they're kind of like, oh, we feel bad, because she ended up giving them 35 hours of like community service work or whatever as punishment. Which I thought was funny, because Caleb's like, oh man, I'm never going to leave the academy. He traded one jail for another, basically, because he already has like 90 hours or something like that he has to do for the shenanigans he did in the first episode. I also thought it was funny because I feel like Occam, being the son of the president, probably has never done a 1 minute of like community service work, because why would he have to? So I thought that was funny too, because he was like, oh man, we got in trouble. It's probably his first time getting in trouble, which is kind of sweet. But anywho, as they're walking back to their dorm rooms, like so defeated, I think it's Genesis who's like, wait a minute, hold on. Chancellor Ake was giving us like a bunch of clues, and they kind of piece it all together, and they're like, I know, we've got a plan. And then they go all like Ocean's 11 on the plan. So they're like, first step, so-and-so, you're going to be the decoy. So-and-so, you're going to go in with the, like, and they do the whole thing where they have like a, kind of like a flash forward of the plan for what people are supposed to do. And I guess they're also doing it in the flash forward, because they didn't do the thing where they flash forward and they try to do the plan and the plan doesn't work out. So they were just kind of like telling what the plan was while they were interacting with the plan. At some point, around this time of making their master plan, Durham has a heart-to-heart with Reno, which I really love. Yes, patience and empathy, exactly. They could have Crusher show up in Academy. They could have Corey show up in Academy, because they're both travelers. Why not? Maybe we'll see it this season. Probably not, but we could. I was going to say they could have River Song show up in Academy, but that wouldn't make any sense. Thank you to PS2 Chipper, who has just gifted 5 memberships. So get them while they're hot. So during this time, Durham has this conversation with Reno, and it's just like, I think there's something wrong with my pad or something, because I keep sending messages and like I'm not receiving. I think the receiving buffer is clogged or whatever. And so Reno looks at his pad, and he's sent like so many messages to his parents. Apparently he's writing logs to them all day long, like from when he wakes up to when he goes to sleep. Every time he has a class, he's constantly sending messages to his parents. And so she looks and she just sees sent, and nothing received, because his parents haven't bothered to respond. So as she's looking down, he realizes the situation and is like, actually, no, it's probably fine. It's nothing. And tries to take the pad back to be like, never mind. Forget what you just saw. And Reno just looks at him and goes, if you're trying this hard to chase down a message, it does not deserve to be read, at least not by you. And I just like got chills. I was like, that's right. You know, and just Reno's just like, no, like if you have to try this hard to get somebody's attention, they're not worth the effort. Even if that someone is your parents, you know, without coming right out and saying, you know, screw your parents. That's what she said. And then he's like kind of thinking about it. But this has been his whole life, is trying to please his parents and get their attention, get their affection. And then she says, what about somebody else who's here, who works super hard, who you've been underestimating, who you've been blah, 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 blah. And then she says, somebody whose name is Genesis, you know, just in case he didn't get all the hints. And he's like, yeah, I got it. So then he realizes that he's been a total dick to Genesis and needs to apologize. And he was competing with her to get his parents' approval, which he'll never get anyways and has nothing to do with her. And he's kind of like, oh my gosh, I've just been a total jerk this whole episode and I need to go make that right. In the middle of this revelation, Lieutenant Thought comes in and starts kind of like yelling at, not really yelling, but like sort of yelling at Reno about like, oh, you didn't fix the replicator and now we're not gonna have dinner and dinner's important. And then Darum has this look on his face like, oh, I'm intruding on something personal. And I was like, oh my gosh, are Reno and Thok a thing? Like, are they a couple? I'm like, oh my God. I literally wish I had watched this episode with somebody just for that moment, just so somebody else could see my face and I could see their face going. I was like, oh my gosh. And I thought later on, this is so funny. Thok is just so Worf in this moment. You know, I heard Michael Dorn in an interview, the actor who played Worf in an interview once, talk about how Worf is always talking about he's such a Klingon warrior, and how like none of these human women can handle him and only a Klingon woman or whatever. But he continuously falls for not Klingon women, despite all his big words. And I just had this Worf flashback of thinking like Thok of all people, half Klingon, half Jem'Hadar, and she falls for Rito, who is like the least Klingon, least Jem'Hadar human probably in all of Earth. And I was just like, oh, classic. You fell for somebody who was just like, did not see that coming. And I also like this whole like confrontation between them. It was perfectly done because you see them having this confrontation in the background, but in the foreground you see Darum like pretending not to listen, even though he's only standing 2 feet away from them, which I don't know. I just thought that was funny because that is also a thing in Academy where there's a lot of like internal conversations or private conversations that are happening 3 feet from somebody else who can very clearly easily hear everything that you're saying. So I don't know. I thought that was really funny. And I loved that reveal. That I was totally surprised. And then as Thok is like storming off, Rito's just like, I will see you for dinner, my love, or something like something so sappy. And Thok is like, I don't need to hear that. I don't know. She gives some kind of like cranky response, which I just thought that was great. Darum does apologize to Genesis for being a dick, and they all make up, and then he becomes part of the plan, and they go to enact their revenge plot on the War College. Yeah, Sela says, I loved Reno in this episode. Yeah, the Trek reviewer says Q could show up in Academy. Q could show up in Academy. Do you think he will show up as the older Q? Because I bet you he would. Klingons normally like strong women. That's fair, because Klingon women are super strong. Not even that, but Klingons killed Reno's original wife in Disco. Ooh, you know what? You just looked that up, right? Like what happened to Reno's wife in Discovery. I literally don't remember that episode at all. Like I don't remember that scene at all. But yeah, that is a major growth. If Klingons killed your first wife and now you're with a Klingon, like that is some major growth, and not just being like, oh, Klingons are evil, which is a very TOS thing. So it would be a very Discovery thing. Okay, so they enact the plan. The plan is basically to take these really, these plants, these really cute little plants that kind of remind me of Little Shop of Horror, like Tui, that big plant. But these plants are very small, and they also talk, and they just kind of like mimic whatever you're saying, and they also, I guess, mimic the energy you're bringing. And Ake had been showing the cadets this plant and telling them about patience and empathy and caring for the plants. And basically that was her hint to be like, use these plants in revenge, but without saying it. So the big plan is to steal into the War College's dorms and then have Sam, who's a photonic, so she can just like pop up, have her spray underneath everybody's rooms a bunch of spores for these plants and then some supercharged growth medium that Genesis made. And it's really cute. They all have like their own little parts to play. Like Jaden, the Klingon, makes an eyeball that matches the War College Chancellor so that they can get behind secret locked doors. Like they all have a little part. They all have a part to play in this. And anyways, when the sun rises, all the spores will germinate and instantly turn into giant plants. And that's exactly what happens. So the plants grow, and they grow exponentially, humongous. They burst through all the doors. All the cadets wake up screaming, half naked, whatever they're wearing. You know, I guess everybody wears underwear instead of pajamas. but they all wake up screaming. They run out of their dorms. They run out into the quad, and like the plants are just growing and like against the wall and coming into the hallway and going down the stairs. Like the plants are everywhere, and they're repeating everything everybody's saying. So they're like, oh my gosh, what's happening? And the plants are like, oh my gosh, what's happening? Like the plants are just mimicking everything. So they run out, and the academy cadets are all sitting out in the quad eating popcorn, looking at the War College's side, and they're just waiting for them to come out. And they're like, so when they come out screaming and in their underwear, they just start dying laughing. So this is like such beautiful revenge. And the War College people are like, oh, we're gonna kick your butts and blah, blah, blah. And then at that moment, both chancellors show up, and they're kind of in the middle of the quad, like in the middle of these these battle lines. And the War College chancellor, he's like, no, you will not. And Ake's there, and she's just like, yeah, if I remember right, these plants are an endangered species, so you're not allowed to move them until they fully grow up, until they fully mature, which means you also need to provide them with a very low-stress environment so that they're able to mature. So good luck with that. And then while she's explaining all this, Thok turns and says, who was it? The Oversight Committee. Because they had an inspection coming, which was Thok's whole issue in the beginning. She was like, we need to nip this in the bud. The inspection committee is coming at the end of the week, and we don't want a bunch of shenanigans happening when we're being inspected. So this all happened, and Thok is like, oh, look, the inspection committee's here. And then Ake's like, oh, how wonderful. And she looks and she says, well, I guess your cadets better go and clean their rooms up because they like to see things tidy, right? And then Kelrick is just like, well played. You have bested me this time. And Ake's like, thank you. And then they look over at the academy cadets, and they're all just like, yes, thank you. I'll be here all week. And it's just like, I don't know. It's really satisfying. It's really funny. It's really stupid. But this made me laugh. I like that it's the kids being imperfect as they should be. 100%. 100%. What is the show SFA? What does that mean? Do you mean Starfleet Academy? Is that what SFA means? The Mario Vines. That's funny. The popcorn was perfect. Yeah. So I thought this was really, like, I laughed out loud at this. I thought this was really funny. And I love that Krellick was big enough to be like, you know what? You got me this time, Ake. You got me. I underestimated you. I didn't think you could do anything. And this was like a really big hit. And we'll take, okay, thanks, Sayla. Yeah. And he's like, all right, we'll take it. Like, all right. And so then there's like this kind of wrap up of the show. Like now that the main conflict has been resolved, what happens now? So we go back to Ake's office. And she's just having a chat with Caleb, and I really love their relationship with one another too. It's very, I don't know, it's very mentor-mentee, and it's pretty sweet. But Caleb is just like, what the heck? Like, this was your plan all along. Why didn't you just tell us? Why didn't you just tell us your plan? We could have done this. And she was like, where's the fun in that? I wanted to see if you guys could figure it out. And also, you guys need to learn how to work together. And also, she was just like, she said, that's cheating. That's what Kelrick was doing. I wasn't going to cheat and just tell you what to do. You guys need to come up with your own plan. Because Caleb was like, you didn't tell us what we should do. You just dropped hints. And then when we came up with a plan, you tried to make us think it was our plan. And it wasn't our plan. It was your plan all along. And I know what you did. And Ake was like, yeah, it's true. But wasn't it great that you guys all did it together and teamwork and all of that? And he was like, yeah, I guess so. So, I don't know, it was just a really sweet moment. And then he leaves. He ends up joining the Calico team because he was all like, I don't do organized sports. But after all of this, then he's like, okay, fine, like, I'll join the team. And they all put on these Letterman jackets, which I want one so bad. I want one of those jackets. They look so cool. They look so warm. They actually look like a leather, so they might be a little too warm. But they look really, really, like, nice and thick, and they have a cool emblem on the back. I want that. And I kind of want a Letterman's jacket for every single show. Even Enterprise, which I have not seen all the way, I'd probably wear that jacket. If it had the emblem on the back, like, and they were all different colors, oh, that'd be so cool. That'd be so cool. Anyways, so they have this conversation. Caleb leaves. Caleb ends up joining the team and putting on his Letterman's jacket, and they're like, yay, Team Academy. And then back in the office, Thok comes in, and she's just like, you know what? I also underestimated you, just like Kelrick did. I thought you weren't going to do anything. I thought you didn't care about, these things that I cared about. But I now realize that you were just doing your job. Because Ake says that to her, like, she's like, I understand, you were just doing your job. And Thok is like, and you were just doing yours, and I didn't trust you, and now I'm really gonna sit and I'm gonna think about that. She said, I'm gonna sit and I'm gonna meditate on what just happened. And Ake's like, well, what do you normally meditate on? And she's like, decapitation. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this is so Jim Hadar. Like, this is great. This is great. I don't know. That character just makes me laugh. And that's kind of the wrap up. So in this episode, we didn't get a lot of forward movement in the whole Caleb's mom situation, which is fine because I think that's going to be more of a long-term thread. But we did get a lot of teen angstiness, which is expected. I will say for me, the first half of this episode, I was pretty meh about. Like, I was kind of like, meh. Like, it's fine. I think that, obviously, it was beautiful. It was beautiful. Like, everything was beautiful. The outfits were gorgeous. The sets were gorgeous. Obviously, it's always beautiful. But the story itself, I was kind of like, whatevs. And then it was like halfway through, or like a little more than halfway through, it was when Darum stepped down as captain that I was like, oh, I like this. And then by the end, I was like, oh my gosh, I like this episode. So I guess I don't like the whole episode. I just like the second half of the episode, or the last fourth. But I really like the last fourth. I don't know. I love the little plants. I thought they were really cute and funny. I like how the robots just keep showing up on campus laughing at people. I just love that the robots are doing that. Like, that's their function, is to just show up and laugh at people. I love the connection between Ake and Caleb. I love Ake. I love this Chancellor / Captain so much. She is just quirky and unhinged, and I'm here for it. I think this is probably because PS2 Chipper, to your point of negative reviews, I have seen a few things, like I don't read them or watch them, but I've seen a few thumbnails where it's just like, we hate Ake or whatever. And I get it because she's not like Krellick, and she's Kelrick. She's also not like any other captain we've had before. But I kind of like that, and it makes sense too. She's like Pelia, right? She's a Lanthanite. She's been around for hundreds of years. So I just feel like she's over it. She's over all the impressing people for what? She already knows that she will just be herself, and there's like, she already knows that this is not going to ruin her life if she's just herself. She was picked for this position when is it Admiral Vance? Is that his name? When Admiral Vance knew exactly what she was like when he picked her. So this is not like a surprise. It's not like she's tricking anybody. And also, she's not on the flagship. So we don't have to worry about her having a ton of ambassadorial duties. She's teaching a school with a bunch of young adults who are trying to figure out their stuff, trying to learn their way. She even mentions to Kelrick at one point where she's like, a lot of these kids, some of these kids showed up here in cargo holds. And she was like, these kids don't need a lesson on how tough the real world is. They know that the world is tough. That's not what they need. They need something else here. And I feel like that's what Ake brings. She brings the something else. So I could totally see why people would not like her. She is, I'm not going to say an acquired taste. I feel like Ake is the kind of person you would love or you would hate, and there's no in between, because her personality is so in your face and her behavior is so in your face. When she plops down on Kelrick's couch, she like purposefully lays all over it and falls over and rolls around and turns on her stomach to sip the tea. Like, she's just being so extra just to piss him off, I am sure, because she does like to be cozy, but like all of that was just to piss him off. And I love that. Like, I'm here for it. And I had this conversation recently with a bunch of other Trekkers, and I'm actually curious what you think. But we were talking about like, who's the best captain, right? And I don't believe there's a best captain. I think there's a best captain depending on the situation, or depending on the rubric. Like, what defines best? We need to be more specific, and then I could pick a best. But I could pick a favorite captain. That is a different question, and I could easily pick a favorite, but maybe not a best. But one of the things we were talking about is, I was like, well, who would you want to work with? Whose ship would you want to serve on? Who would you want to serve under as your boss, as your leader? And then somebody had brought up Pike, and I was like, I would not want Pike to be my leader. But somebody was like, but wouldn't you want Pike at a cookout? Like, wouldn't you be friends with Pike? And I was like, absolutely. I would absolutely be friends with Pike. And I was like, probably of all the captains, he's the only person I would feel comfortable being friends with. Like, all the other ones feel a little too, like, I don't know, lofty or removed. I mean, Sisko's a freaking prophet. You know, like, they feel like they wouldn't be, I feel like Picard would be super awkward in just like a regular casual setting. And they just don't feel approachable. I don't think I'd feel comfortable around Kirk for like one single second, because he does a lot of leering. But I think Pike, I would totally feel like, I think I'd be friends with him immediately. He just seems like such a cool dude. And I feel the same way about Ake. I feel like she would just be so cool. I feel like we would get along right away. I wouldn't feel like she's so far above me and we just don't have anything in common. Like, especially she's been around for all this time. She knows everything about everything. I think she'd be a great dinner guest. I think she'd be super interesting. I think it'd be weird that she'd be walking around with no shoes on, but I would just chalk that up to her quirky personality. So I'm such a fan of this character. She's probably, well, Sam is a strong favorite because she's like so sweet, but Ake is like in the running for one of my favorite characters of the show so far. I'll probably won't have a full favorite to the end. Okay. I have some predictions / questions. First, I want to check the chat and then I'll go to that. Patty says this episode made me smile. I totally agree. Karen says, why does everything have to be a lesson? Because it's a school. That was a really good line. Yeah, that was what Caleb said. Like, oh, why does everything because when he was like, why didn't you just tell us? And Ake was like, because you had to learn a valuable lesson. And he was like, why does everything have to be a lesson? And she's like, because it's a school. Everything's a lesson, which I actually thought was, yeah, there was just a lot of like funny lines here. Wellington says she was teaching, which is the Starfleet way. Not giving orders, which is the War College way. Patty says, exactly, 100%. Wingrace says, the Enterprise has a cool landing party jacket in episode 1 I've always wanted. Do you think, Wingrace, that they have, ooh, Captain Riker. I agree with you on Captain Riker. Do you think that they have that jacket? Like, do you think that jacket is in production somewhere from Enterprise? I am hopefully going to go to the Star Trek convention this year. I've never been. There's one in Vegas every year. And from the trailer I saw, there just looked like a crap ton of merch. So I feel like if you're gonna get a Letterman's jacket from a show or a landing party jacket or something, it's got to be there. So I just feel like that has to exist. Enterprise was so long ago, that has to exist somewhere. Interesting. So PS2 Chipper says Kurtzman's contract expires in 2026. And there's been no meetings between Kurtzman and Elsa. How do you know this? How do you know what's going on there? Sela says, agreed. I absolutely love Captain Ake and all of her quirks. PS2 Chipper says, it's Captain Nog for me. Oh, okay. Okay, see, Captain Nog. So, okay. I do adore Nog. Nog was easily my favorite character on Deep Space Nine from beginning to end. Although I really liked Quark, the actor who played Quark was masterful, and the actor who played Garrick, holy cow, like those two could do literally anything, like anything. But as a character, I did love Nog. However, when Nog came to women, he was weird. So me personally, I don't know if I would be down with Captain Nog. It depends on how much he has changed over time. We did have that one episode in The Visitor where we see Captain Nog, and grown-up Jake Sisko was like, you're doing so much better now that you're no longer demanding that women chew your food for you, or something like that. Like there's some kind of joke that maybe he's grown in that area, which I hope he has, because it had been a long time. But for me, Captain Nog would probably be a pass unless I saw how he treated women in general, because the whole like chew my food for me, that was weird. That was super weird. The Trek Reviewer says Captain Riker would be cool to serve under. I don't know. I think Riker would make a great captain. And to my point of like who would be a good person to hang out with, I think Riker would be a cool hang. I think he'd be so fun to hang out with. I think he'd be interesting. I think he'd be charming. I think he'd have a lot of good stories to tell. I would feel super comfortable around Riker. I also kind of feel like even when Riker is a captain, maybe it's because we had so much time with Riker as a first officer, but my feelings towards the picture of Riker as a captain, he still feels accessible, and he still feels like a cool guy. Like, I would obviously respect him just like you'd respect him as the first officer, but he just feels more accessible to me than Picard. Like, I feel like I could have a meal with Riker and it'd be cool. I feel like if I had a meal with Picard, I'd be like trying to pick the right fork or something like that. That could just be a me thing, though. Wingrace says, since you glossed over episode 2, what about the Rock Talk alien? Oh my gosh, yes. And I was like, is that Rock Talk? Like, I was like, hold on, what's going, wait, because at the end of Prodigy's, this is a spoiler for Prodigy. Okay, I won't give the spoiler for Prodigy, but yes, Wingrace would probably need to talk about that. That was so cool that they brought that to life. Like, I was just, I was mind blown. I was here for it. I didn't see that coming, because we've seen a lot of, we saw that black and white alien from TOS. We saw that guy who's like part Ferengi, part something else that I don't know what it is, who was in the pilot episode in the Academy, but in episode 3 was in the War College. So maybe you could transfer. I don't know. But we're seeing a lot of like hybrid species, which I think is so interesting and genius, because instead of coming up with a whole new list of species, we have like hundreds of species that we've already been introduced to through all the other shows that we've only seen. A lot of them we've only seen one time and never again. So yeah, we could just like bring those back and recombine them. And I think it's a genius idea. We don't need to keep coming up with new ones, especially when the new one we have, which is Darum, just looks human. Like he doesn't have any ridges or anything. So like, saving on prosthetics, I get it. But yeah. So seeing Rock Talk was wonderful. I loved that. This is just exciting to me. Like seeing all these different visuals is really fun. And I've seen custom Enterprise jackets, but not official ones. Ooh. Custom, like they put your name on it? Because that sounds cool. PS2 Tripper says, an old friend of mine fulfilled her dream by going to the Star Trek convention. Oh, and she died shortly after due to cancer. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. But I'm glad that she got that dream while she could. Oh, that's really sad. But I'm also glad she went. You've got to watch those STO YouTube episodes I sent you. I think I did. Didn't you send me the one? You mean all the ones with like Spock going on and on with Spocky stuff? Is that what you mean? Because I did watch those. Silas is Captain 7 of 9. Now, I am such a fan of 7. PS2 Chipper says 7 is my second choice. I am such a fan. She would be very ethical. She'd be intense. I'm a fan of 7 of 9 as a character. I think many people are. She's obviously a fan favorite, which is why they brought her back for Picard. I don't know how I would feel serving under her, because do you remember when she first came aboard Voyager? Not when she first came, but when she was when she became a part of the crew, and what was she even doing? I don't remember what she was doing, but she was in charge, and she was taking all the crew members and putting them in little pods of 3 and like turning them into little collectives. And remember, she like demoted Harry Kim because he wasn't listening, and she was like, you're no longer 3 of 6, you're now 4 of 6 or whatever. And he was just like, and he went to Chakotay and he's like, I can't do this anymore. So I feel like that leadership style would not work for me. However, obviously by the time we see her in Picard, she's grown a lot, she's rebelled, she's done all these things. She's joined the Rangers. She's lost Icheb, rest in peace. That's a spoiler, but like, don't watch the episode because, awful. And not that the episode's awful, but how could you do that to Icheb? Of all people, Icheb, come on. So she's different. She does become a captain for 13 seconds in Picard. She becomes a captain at some point. We don't really get to see her captaining skills. So I don't know. While I like the character, I don't know if I would like serving under her as a captain. I would need to see her with her people first. And then to my other question of like, would you want to hang out with her? Does she even eat food? Is she still eating just synthesized nutritional supplements? Like, she doesn't seem like the let's go out and get drinks kind of person. So while I like the character, I don't know how I would feel about hanging out with Captain 7. Do you think the Salamanders will return in Starfleet Academy? That is a good question. The Salamanders did have a cameo in Lower Decks. So we did get to see them again, fortunately or unfortunately. I don't know if they will come back in Academy. If they do, is your question, are they going to come back like sentient, like talking and walking, or are they going to come back as pets or something like that? I don't know. That'd be an interesting callback. Part of me never wants to see or hear or think about those salamander babies for the rest of my long life. But if I did see them, I'd be like, I mean, as long as it was like a cameo, right? I'd be like, oh, I see what you did there. But if it's like, let's spend a lot of time with these babies, I don't know. Because at this point, it's been like 1,000 years since those babies were dropped off on Planet X. So who knows what they are now? That would be interesting. I have heard a fan theory that they turned into the Gorn, which I just love that. I love that they somehow turned into the Gorn and then traveled back in time to mess with the TOS crew or something. That just feels poetic. Although I guess they should have messed with Voyager to make it really fair, but the Trek reviewer says, we see Captain Riker in season 3 of Picard. We do. Best of Both Worlds. Yeah, but Best of Both Worlds is a time reset by Q. Parallels is also a time reset. Future Imperfect is not a time reset, but it's a holodeck-esque unreality. And then not Best of Both Worlds. I'm sorry. All Good Things. All Good Things is a time reset by Q. Parallels is a time reset. Future Imperfect is fake hologram thing. But we do see him in Best of Both Worlds Part 2. He's captain for like 10 minutes before Picard comes back. He's captain for the whole episode, but like most of the episode is just them fighting the Borg and trying to capture the captain and take him back. So we don't really see him captaining. He's also captain for like a few seconds in Time's Arrow Part 2, where Picard is stranded in the past, in like 18th century San Francisco. So he's also captain there for like a hot second. And again, we don't see him doing much captaining. Mostly he's just like, we got to go get the captain back. Like, that's mostly what he's doing. So we do see him as the captain in Picard season 3. I don't know if we see him command. I mean, you might remember better than me because I only watched Picard when it aired. I haven't seen it since, so I don't totally remember. I don't know if we see him command a lot, or if the only sense we get is him just kind of fussing with Picard because Picard's trying to come and run the show, and Riker's like, no, dude, this is my ship. So maybe that's where we see the most Riker, the most Captain Riker. But I'm not against it. I think Riker's cool. I like Riker. We do see Captain Riker in Lower Decks. Yes, Grace. We do see Captain Riker there. But he's kind of like crazy, right? He's kind of wild because it's Lower Decks. So he's a little bit unhinged as the captain in Lower Decks from my recollection. Sela says, and have the knowledge of 1,000 species. Oh yeah, 7 of 9. Yes, but like the bedside manner of none of them, I guess. PS2 Chipper, Star Trek Online. Star Trek Online. Oh, okay. Hold on. Do we see the salamanders in Star Trek Online? Like, do they come back? Because honestly, why? Windray says Captain Naomi Wildman. We know she's captain, right? Like, we see her name on the wall that says captain. We don't hear anything about her in Picard, correct? Yeah, that'd be sweet to see her. Wellington says Captain Freeman feels like the most real person I would meet in my life, making me most comfortable on her ship. Yes, I agree with you. I think Captain Freeman is the most, maybe Freeman next to Ake are the most human-like captains, the most regular people captains, the most accessible captains in that sense. But I would absolutely not want to be on the Cerritos under any circumstances. That ship is crazy. The ship is wild. Their missions are wacky. The staff is wild. Like, I would never want to serve on the Cerritos, ever. However, yeah, Captain Freeman seems super cool. Really funny, really nice. I will totally agree with you. Who was that? Wellington? I will totally agree with you, Wellington, that I would say Captain Freeman, Chancellor Ake, and Captain Pike. Those 3 I would totally be friends with just like in regular life. Those 3 characters, because they do seem super cool and like really nice. And Freeman, I don't know if she seems nice per se, but she doesn't seem standoffish or like grandiose, or she seems like very much a regular person. Her and Ake I would put on the same level of just like regular people who just happen to do this particular job. When Grace says a random background salamander cadet sounds great. Oh gosh, would that be PS2 Chipper? The salamanders are the joke that keep on giving, no matter how much we don't want them to. How would you feel if you saw a random salamander cadet just like walking through the background or like chilling in the background during one of Ake's speeches? I don't even know. I don't even think I would clock it, honestly, until somebody brought it to my attention. Then I'd be like, the freaking salamanders. Why won't we let them just go in peace? When Grace says, oh yeah, I already read that. Okay, so PS2 Chipper says, I've never seen the salamanders in Star Trek Online. I wonder if they're there though, somewhere. When Grace says they had ideas for Naomi in Picard season 3, but removed it for time's sake. So we did not hear anything about her, I don't think, right? Karen says they mentioned Naomi in Lower Decks. Oh, they did mention Naomi in Lower Decks, but she wasn't captain at that time because of her age. She was in the 40 under 40 or 30 under 30 or whatever that list is that Boimler was trying to get on. And she was a child still because of the timing, because Lower Decks happens after Voyager gets home, I think, is like, because they talk about Tom Paris and the Kazon and stuff like that. So Lower Decks is like a little bit after Voyager's time. So Naomi Wildman is still a kid. So she made like the top 10 list and she wasn't even old enough to be on the list. And Boimler was like, come on, which is pretty funny. PS2 Chipper says, I would watch Star Trek Academy for the rest of my life if the salamanders make a return. Oh, PS2 Chipper, do not become a gambling man. That's not going to be a gamble that you want to win. Okay. All right. Was it a 3-year gap? Actually, I don't know. When Grace might know, because you know like more about the details. I don't know the exact timing, but it's after TNG and it's after Voyager already gets home. And I don't know how many years. And maybe at some point they reference it. They probably do. But just based on like how Riker's a captain at this point, the Voyager's already made home at this point. Like I know it's a little bit after that. Mariner, makes a comment in one of the episodes about how she went to the academy with Ensign Sito, which was in the episode Lower Decks of TNG. And that was the ensign who was Bajoran, who got killed on an undercover mission, which was so sad. Like, oh, the episode always makes me cry. But she said that she was at the academy with her, and she made it sound like she was like a freshman and Sito was like a senior or something like that. So she was just a couple years behind Sito. Now, I don't know how old Mariner's supposed to be in Lower Decks, so there's still more years that you would add to that. But she has been kicked off a ton of ships, and she's been bounced around all over the place. She's still a lower decker because of her. When she starts the show, she's just like against the man or whatever. So I don't know exactly where the timing is for the show. Okay. PS2 Chipper says, I have a gut feeling it's 3 years. Okay, 3 years sounds good. All right, well, with that, I am done with my oh, nope, I'm not done with my recap. I didn't do my predictions. Oh, my word. Okay, predictions. I have a couple predictions about the upcoming episodes. Predictions/questions. One, there was no mention of Caleb's mom. There was no mention of Caleb's mom in this episode, which I'm fine with. That's going to be a longer arc, so we don't need to hit it every single episode. This episode was more about Caleb fitting in and feeling like a part of the group, and that's going to be his ongoing struggle, so I'm fine with that. I do like the theory from last week. I don't remember who said this, so if you're in the chat, let me know, or if you're in the comments, let me know. But someone had said, I think that maybe Caleb's mom is like a pirate queen. I'm here for that. I like that. I want that to be revealed in the season finale, that Caleb's mom is actually a pirate queen, and that's why she never reached out, because now she's, maybe when she first went to jail, she was innocent, you know, but being in jail for so many years, because she just got out 5 months before Caleb tried to break her out. So it was 15 years before he was old enough to try to break her out. So she was in jail for 15 years with a bunch of criminals. It's very understandable that to stay alive, she merged with them and learned the ways and all the things. So it would make total sense that when she broke out with, what's the guy's name? Whatever the bad guy's, oh, it was DJ Magix, thank you. Whatever the main bad guy is, when she broke out with the bad guy, it makes sense that they like formed an alliance or went off together, or somehow she also became this pirate queen. I think that will be revealed in the season finale, and then it'll leave us on a big cliffhanger where he'll be like, oh my gosh, my mom's alive, and then it'll be like, but she's the head of the syndicate or something, and it'll be like, oh. And it's got to be something really dramatic, like they're in a firefight, or Caleb comes face to face with somebody that they've been chasing, and then they turn around and that person's his mom, and he's got a phaser on his mom, the mom's got a phaser on him, and they look at each other, and then it's like, bum, 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 thank you, Braca, that's his name, Braca. And it's like, bum, 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 and then it's like, to be continued, and then it goes off. So that's my prediction for that she's alive as a pirate queen. Caleb and Tarima. So that is like our main love story, is Caleb and the Beta Z princess, like the president's daughter. I hope that is the main love story and only love story. I think that's fine. Like, this was what was promised in the trailers, that this is going to be a thing. And so I'm fine with that. And I think they're very cute. My prediction is that this will be a classic will they, won't they story. So they'll have all this tension. They will eventually hook up in some way, either a hookup, or they will officially start to date and be boyfriend, girlfriend. And then something will happen where they have to break up, or Tarima has to go back to Beta Z, or one of them will have an affair, or something like that. And that's just because that's drama, right? Conflict and drama is what makes a story good. This is why will they, won't they's are always really interesting. This is why it lasted for years and years and years on Cheers. This is why it works so well on The Office with Jim and Pam. Like, that kind of conflict is just interesting to watch. So I think they'll just follow that classic path, but like aged down to be appropriate for young adults. So it'll be like a Jim and Pam, but more age appropriate to them and also to their situation. For Genesis and Darum, there was like a little flirtation thing between them in the beginning. Genesis was flirting with Caleb, and Genesis was flirting with Darum. And so I thought it was going to be a love triangle, because that's classic love triangle. I mean, even with Beverly and Picard, we had a love triangle with Jack Crusher, who had died 20 years ago. So love triangles are pretty classic. So I thought that was where they were going with this. But it seems like they took a really hard left in episode 2, where they were like, oh no, Caleb likes this Betazoid girl. Like, that's going to be a thing. So Genesis and Darum were rivals in this episode before they kind of became friends and made a peace. But it seems like maybe the chemistry is not there. So I don't know. My prediction / hope is that they will just stay platonic. I hope that they will just stay platonic and just be the best of friends. That'll be great, because that's more than enough. How are you going to throw in the ghost and the candle? Can Beverly ever live that down? The ghost candle for Beverly is what the salamander baby is for Tom Paris. It's just like the thing that just no one will let you forget. So I hope that Genesis and Darum just become really good friends and stay platonic. I feel like one hookup is enough. We have other relationships. We have Thok and Reno. Like, we can have other relationships, but I just don't want to like follow their whole love journey. Because look at what happened with Strange New Worlds. Like, one relationship is more than enough. When it became a bunch, it was just like overwhelming, not in a good way. Okay, last one, the Doctor. I am not sure when the EMH reverted back to season 1 Doctor, but all of Academy, the Doctor has just been grumpy. And this is for sure a Star Trek trope, right? Because this is classic Bones, a grumpy Doctor. Some for some reason, I guess that feels futuristic when we have a grumpy Doctor. I don't know. And we have a lot of grumpy Doctors because Bones was grumpy, Pulaski was grumpy. The Doctor on Prodigy, I think he's a Nausicaan, super grumpy. And then we have some Doctors that are kind of the opposite of that. We have Beverly, who's quite lovely, and we have Culber on Discovery, who's just like the nicest Doctor you could ever want. You know, he literally is like, has a smile plastered on his face for all of season 5. Even when he's going through trauma, he's like, it's fine. Super nice Doctor. And you've got, I mean, on Strange New Worlds, like, neither of them are really, they're just like regular people. Neither of them are extreme on either end. But the Doctor in this show so far has just been really grumpy. He's just mad. He just feels like season 1 Voyager Doctor. He's just mad at everybody. He's mad at the world. He's mad for existing. He's mad for whatever. And part of me is like, oh man, this is a regression. Because by the time we got to the end of Voyager, he was totally transformed. But now at this point, his program has been running for like 1,000 years. So maybe he's seen so much that it just has made him bitter. Maybe bitterness is a part of his, yes, Bashir, who was totally lovely. Maybe bitterness is a part of his program now. I'm not really sure. And I don't know how to feel about it because I loved the evolution of the Doctor in Voyager. I feel like he was one of the most transformed characters by the end based on where he was at the beginning. I think the Doctor, Kes, and 7 of 9 showed a huge transformation from the beginning of their story to the end of their story. And now I feel like he's just like reverted. Like he's just back to season 1. Womp womp. However, season 1 Doctor is more interesting because he's grumpy, because he's, prickly. He is a lot more sarcastic and biting and has funnier comments and has more awkward, unpleasant interactions with the rest of the crew. So I think it will probably play better as far as storylines go. But I wonder, are they going to change his character? Is he just going to be the grumpy Doctor for however many seasons this show runs? Or are they going to allow him to have any kind of arc? We don't need it because we have Sam, who's also photonic, who may need some, that'd be more important for the purposes of this show. But I'm just curious. So it's something I noticed. Whatever. Like, if they do drop the whole cranky thing, great. If they don't, great. I have no problems. I love seeing the Doctor. I love seeing him sing opera. I was here for it in episode 2. It was like the Doctor singing opera again was so fun to watch. So I get the Doctor. I can't complain. I get him anyway. I'm here for it. And then my last prediction question is about the War College itself. Now, I feel like because they set up this rivalry between the Academy and the War College, at some point, these two groups have to work together. My assumption is they will have to work together to beat a common foe, maybe in the season finale. Maybe Brocca's going to... We have to see Brocca again. So Brocca will come back with his pirate queen by his side, Caleb's mom. And the Academy and the War College will have to band together to somehow fight him. Because for some reason, Brocca's going to come all the way to Earth to start some drama. Or maybe they'll be on an away mission. Maybe they'll have some joint away mission on some other planet. Yes, Dr. Ta'ana. Dr. Ta'ana is super cranky. Exactly. Maybe they'll have some away mission where both schools have to go for reasons on some planet or moon. And then Brocca will find out and he'll show up and he'll try to kill everybody or kidnap people or steal their warp cores or whatever he might do. And then the War College and the Academy will have to work together to end a common foe, and they'll put aside their grievances and they'll save the day. My prediction is that will happen at some point. However, that alliance needs to be tentative and quickly dissolve. And that's because this is such a good source of conflict. It's a very easy us versus them. It's very simple to have groups on either side to do a Romeo-Juliet thing, to be like, oh, they're with the jerks, but they're not jerks or whatever. We saw that with this one guy. He doesn't have a name as far as I know, but he's a guy in the War College, and he was like nice to Jaden, and he like was laughing at the plants. He was like, oh, this is kind of funny, where everybody else was screaming and running and pissed. He was like, oh, that's a funny thing that happened. So he seems like he's going to be one of the like defectors, somebody who's in the War College but like is not so into it. I think we'll have little bits of that, but for the most part, I think this conflict needs to exist between the two schools because it's going to make a nice little platter for lots of different storylines that can come upon them. So I think at some point they will have to work together and then immediately fall back apart. This is my thinking. Also with Caleb and Darum, like it's the same thing, right? They're roommates, but they work together in Calica. They work together whenever they have to, but then they also like fight all the time. I think it'll be something like that. Okay, let me check the chat. Those are all my predictions. Any other predictions, let me know. So PS2 Chipper says, according to AI, Lower Decks takes place 2 to 3 years after Voyager returns home. While Voyager returned in 2378, Lower Decks Season 1 begins in 2380. Okay, well, there you go. Wingrace says, we have a love triangle of Genesis and Caleb and Darum, and Genesis and Caleb and Terima. What? Interesting. Oh, you're right. There was a scene in episode 2 where Caleb is like, they're at that party or mixer, whatever, for the delegates. And Caleb is like so starstruck by Terima and is like walking, sees her and just like walks right past Genesis to go to talk to her or something. And Genesis is kind of giving the side eye. That's true. But those were like very light love triangles. So I'm hoping they stay light and don't like become a whole thing. One Grace says a Tellarite on Prodigy. Okay, I couldn't remember if he was a Tellarite or if he was a Nausicaan, but I remember he was something very aggressive and cranky. Okay, so the Doctor on Prodigy was a Tellarite played by Jason Alexander. I think the Doctor had some trauma during the burn. Ooh, interesting. Maybe his whole ship blew up and he was just lost in space for years after everyone died around him. Oh my gosh. So what if he was like Lore when they beamed him out into space with the crystalline entity, but it was the Doctor and he was just like, his program was just floating around until someone like found him and scooped him up and gave him life. Also, we had a second Doctor from Voyager who was in the episode, what's the name of that episode? It'll come to me, or it won't, and you'll remember. But there was this episode where the Doctor's, like a copy of the Doctor's program was found on this planet that was was about to have a civil war, and they blamed Voyager for causing the war. And then when the scientists reactivated the Doctor, he was like, no, I can tell you exactly what happened. And he told them what happened. And they were like, the people they thought were the aggressors weren't really the aggressors. And so then they rewrote history and the Doctor helped them actually they went to war again. And then the Doctor kind of helped them. Living witness. Thank you. The Doctor helped them like rewrite their history to make it a little more accurate based on what he knew. And then at some point, and then he became like a teacher at their university or something. And then at some point he was like, I wanted to, the Doctor wanted, because somebody at the museum, it like fast forwarded many years again and was like, the Doctor helped us in all these wonderful ways. And then eventually he wanted to go home. So he left and he got on a shuttle and made his trip back to the Alpha Quadrant. And we hope he made it. We don't know if he made it, but I want to believe that he made it because he's a Doctor. I don't want to lose the Doctor. I don't want to lose any version of the Doctor. So I kind of want a second Doctor moment. I feel like if we had more Lower Decks, we might have gotten it there. But I kind of want a second Doctor moment, just like we had the Thomas Riker moment, where we were like 2 Rikers, and then we had the second Boimler moment. And it's like 2 Boimlers. I kind of want a second Doctor moment. Maybe we'll get that in Academy, just like maybe we'll get Wesley Crusher. Maybe we'll get Corey Sung. Maybe we'll get second Doctor, and maybe the second Doctor is not grumpy at all, because maybe he's showing up like at this time and is like younger and less damaged and less traumatized. Yes, exactly. More Picardo. I'd be here for it. I don't know if they would do that, but I'd be here for it. Lower Decks is a grumpy Doctor. Yes, Ta'ana. Dr. Ta'ana is the grumpiest grump who ever grumped, and I love her. I love that, Wellington. Yeah, it was a really good episode. I like that episode. Okay, so now I'm done for reals. Thank you so much for watching. For all of you who tuned in live, thank you to everyone who's watching on the replay. I have decided that I'm going to review all the episodes of Academy. Let's see if I'm able to stick with it, but I'm trying real hard. And up into the finale, and we'll see if any of these predictions have paid off. So if that's your jam, stick around. If that's not your jam, maybe join me after episode 10, so in a couple of weeks, or go and watch the backlog. On that note, thank you so much for coming, and